You are listening to
The Free Amigos.
Hey, I'm Casper.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tony.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 11 of the Free Amigos podcast, season 2, by the way. And we got a lovely guest today, and I'm really looking forward to this call today. But first of all, of course, we always have Mark.
Hello.
And there's Tony as well. How's it going?
Hello.
We got Cynthia, better known as Curls in the community because, well, she's got the most curly hair of the whole community. Well, I've got so many topics to talk about today, but I think that we just need to hand the microphone to Curls here. Cynthia, what is it that you're doing? Because you work with a lot of people and you inspire a lot of people working with traumas. And can you explain a little bit about that?
Of course. First of all, thanks for having me. Great to be with the Free Amigos.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'd say that my calling is to help survivors of abuse take back control when they've been left feeling broken, unfixable, and frustrated because nothing seems to be helping in their life. So it upsets me to witness survivors being unable to live their lives fully or to even experience relationships, normal relationships, if we can, if there's any normal relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already challenging on their own, but when you come from trauma, obviously it adds a layer of complications there. So it's really helping. I specifically work with women, and it's to help them get past childhood abuse without feeling disempowered or judged.
And so there must be a lot of trust, might be a key word there then, or
Yes.
when you talk about relationships, right?
Yes, that trust is a big issue for survivors. They have been betrayed by someone really close. Very often it's a parent, a father. Therefore, trust is
Big issue.
Yeah. It's a massive issue. They rather isolate themselves, stay in silence, than really opening up to people, because when they've done that in the past, the repercussions were quite serious. When they've shared or, try to defend themselves. So, yeah.
But it's happening, isn't it? Like, we're seeing it a lot in today's, like, people are speaking up now, and it was quiet for so long, wasn't it? People felt they couldn't speak up, and we've had a few people on the pod who've experienced childhood trauma. I know Jaden talked about it, Florrie and Alex, and I think it's really interesting though the way I always think it can either like make or break you, really, can't it? And you see people who go on to have these incredible lives, and it really empowers them. They do these amazing things like you're obviously doing now in the community. But equally, it can go the other way. And Jaden for decades was just struggling with abuse and tried to commit suicide on a number of occasions as well before something just happened, and he managed to pull himself out of it and turn his life around, and now he's helping people. But I'm just wondering, what would you say advice you could give for somebody who's going through that now? Is there anything you kind of will generally point to for people to go to in order that you've seen as being particularly successful, people who've been through like childhood trauma in particular?
I think the first thing, and that goes against everything as survivors who hasn't healed yet, don't do it alone. Ask for help. It's a tough journey, the journey to healing. And when you try and do it on your own, all you do is revisit your past. And it's always the same thing happening in your head. You cannot see the blind spots. You cannot understand what triggers you on a day-to-day life, because it's the daily basis that you'll get triggered by something that will bring you right back to the past. It can be a man walking in an alley behind you. It can be a scent, a perfume that reminds you maybe of the perfume that the abuser was wearing. And that is enough to completely trigger a pattern in you. So you can't unpack that on your own.
No.
You might be able to do a little bit of it, but there's going to be a moment where you will hit a wall. And as you said, it can go one way and you can transcend trauma. I believe it because I've done it and I've seen people doing it. But you can end up falling into cycles of abuse. Like you'll get out of your childhood abuse, end up marrying someone who is abusive. You'll end up being in an abusive marriage. Your children will experience that, will be traumatized, and not to mention the side ones like alcohol, drugs, gambling. There's so many side effects that come with that. So don't do it on your own.
Yeah, otherwise you can fall in that continuous cycle.
No, it's meeting that person, whether it's a therapist, a counselor, a coach, that has done it, that can understand you,
has empathy for it,
but has empathy for you. It's having that mentor that have those years of experience, that have walked through that fire and can guide you. It's about guidance. It's about support, and it's also about feeling safe. It's extremely important for people to feel safe.
Yeah, because I imagine overriding emotion with trauma patients is a feeling of vulnerability all the time, and putting trust in someone else. I imagine that's incredibly difficult for people.
Yeah, no, trusting is it's the number one thing. It will always be like, can I trust you? Can I give you my heart? Can I give you my love? Can I anything? And it's not just in loving relationships. It will be at work. It would be friendships. So yeah, it's really about trust and feeling safe. Safety is a big one as well, because you don't experience this during your childhood. You're always like that deer in the savannah, wondering when the lion is going to pounce on you. So you're constantly watching over your shoulder, and you create coping mechanisms that work in the moment. It was efficient, but you keep using them as you grow up, and as you reach adulthood, you're still using coping mechanisms you were using when you were 5 years old, but now they're not serving you anymore, or they're used to such an extreme that they're sabotaging you.
When you become that deer in the headlights, basically, it's also really hard. Let's say whether you say you work mostly with women, let's say they find a nice man. It doesn't have to be a vicar, but a nice man, and the woman will be on the back legs the whole time. That will damage the relationship then as well.
Yeah, and even if she manages to trust him, there might be cracks in other areas like intimacy, sexual relationships. Or this might all work, and then she'll get triggered when she gets pregnant or have children, or the children reach the age she was when she started being abused. There's so many things that can trigger a survivor. That's why if you don't have someone that helps you, it's like walking in the Amazonia, where the flora is so intense that it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming to understand. It's a constant
fight or flight, isn't it? I imagine the stress that must cause physically, emotionally.
That can be triggered by one sense. Like whether you hear something, whether you recognize the voice, smell something. I love that smell one. For me, when I smell Lily of the Valleys, that's my mom. Boom, that takes me back to childhood. That was her perfume, and I love I love how quickly that triggers something. And in this case, my mom, who is really lovely. But if it's a negative association with the sense, whatever it is. Could be a breeze coming down from a mountain, could be a raindrop, whatever it is.
Can be like for every survivor, there will be different types of trigger. So it's a constant, you're constantly flooded with emotions that you can't manage. They don't have that control because you need the tools to understand that.
So the emotion has control over you then when the trigger hits in.
It triggers the brain, and you know how the brain works. Basically, the job of the brain is to protect you. And it doesn't make a difference between what's real, what is not real, the past and the present. So if a man walks by you and has a perfume that's similar to the person who abused you, the brain is immediately going to think danger, danger, danger. And then you'll react. You might freeze, you might have a panic attack, you might have problems breathing, you might start sweating, your heart starts racing, all these kind of things. That's where my passion comes from. It's to really re-empower these women, for them to realize, okay, you've gone through this. It doesn't have to be the narrative of your present. So you can really overcome that. But like everything, there are steps to healing. There are different steps. You're not going to suddenly be like, oh, I've decided to heal, and then tomorrow you've transcended trauma. It doesn't work like that.
No.
You're going to have to face your demons. And that is why a lot of people are scared of embarking on that journey, because healing is allowing all your demons to show up. It's allowing the pain to come back to the surface. It's allowing the images. It's looking at the flashbacks. Survivors have a lot of flashbacks where you'll suddenly have, crude memories flashing within your mind.
Yeah.
Like children that have experienced child sexual abuse have the same level of PTSD as veterans, people coming back from war. But the difference for children, it's that it starts really at a young age, usually. And the brain is not formed yet. At 5, 6, 7 year old, your brain is not completely formed. So you grow up with a level of stress that is enormous while your brain is still developing. So it creates other issues for survivors, often have issues to learn, to focus, and things like this.
It's conditioning. It's conditioning in the wrong way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's conditioning the wrong things in the mind. That we talked about this before, of course.
NLP.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
The programming in the literal wiring of the brain is based on a certain kind of fear, but also, especially when you talk about really complex things, as in being violated, especially sexually abused by your own parents. The moment when you grow up, that's what you learn, as in you don't know the world yet. And that's a really complex thing. So you don't know as a child, that is the wrong thing to do. You feel it, but you don't know it. Yeah. That can be quite problematic, I think.
It is, and you're learning from a young age. Everything is violated: your body, your boundaries, your sense of self, your self-esteem. So obviously you come out of that with a set of belief that is completely, and you usually, because children see things either black or white. They don't see, some of you are parents here, how they work. It's either black or white. They're either happy or they're not happy.
Yeah.
So if it's, for example, a parent, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, a cousin, it can be a brother as well. Some women do abuse children, but it's rare. It's usually usually heterosexual men, and usually they know the child. They're close by. It's very, very rarely a stranger. So it's family, friends, close friends of the family, or it can be someone, an adult they trust, a teacher, a coach, someone like that. So let's say if it's a father, they still love their dad. It is still the dad. So they need to kind of separate, and in order for them to survive the fact that the person they love, the dad, is also abusing them, they turn all of this towards themselves and they become the bad guy. So they carry all of it so that, you know, they're not projecting it on the parent. Imagine growing up with this. The survivors very often carry an enormous amount of shame, guilt, and they think that they deserved what happened.
Yeah.
One of the big problems there is what you just said. And amazingly, you work with people and trying to change the world here and help people. Obviously, it's absolutely amazing. But one of the difficulties is that when you grow up like that, you got kind of like the thinking mind, thinking, you know, well, like you say, I still love my father, or it's my father, or neighbor, brother, whoever. But you feel inside that it's wrong, and that's a conundrum that must be really difficult for child, and that must be a conundrum that unravels while you grow up, or that's what I think. What do you think about that?
Is it always the case that the child know they're being abused, depending on their age and stuff, or is it until the case when they're much older and they soon realise that say, for instance, my dad did when I was younger, I now know that was wrong, and does that compound the trauma even more so? They sometimes have that realisation.
Yes, it's a massive punch in the face when you realise other children are not living like you live.
Yeah,
have not experienced what you've experienced, and that's usually how they'll find out, because it's like, oh, really? Your father doesn't do this to you? Or, okay, something's going on there. But instinctively, there's a knowing that it's not good, because the abusers are usually incredibly good at manipulating. And they will talk to, sometimes people are like, well, why they don't say anything? It's like, well, in some cases, they are told that if they say anything, someone they love will get hurt. Or that they will get hurt. You know, they'll think, oh, I might be the one going to prison, or something will happen to me. So they are scared of talking because of that. They are prompted and brainwashed in a way.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, they're blackmailed.
Yeah.
Some of them are blackmailed, and there's a fear. And some households, it will be all the abuses going on at the same time: the sexual, physical, mental. So it's you know,
It's heavy. That's
a lot.
How do you then, because this is a heavy subject, and if you're helping people hearing these stories, I'm guessing on a regular basis, you know, and so that's a tough ask for somebody like you who's taking this kind of work on. So is there a way that you would kind of protect yourself from constantly kind of re-traumatizing yourself, you know, taking on these stories all the time, having to kind of take on this energy from people, like you say, who've been through these terrible things? How do you maintain your own well-being when doing this work?
Here's the thing. I don't focus on the trauma. I focus on the healing. Yes, they will tell me their story, but then we move on and we focus on their power. And that makes it much easier. I don't sit there for hours going over and over and over and over the story. The story helps to unpack and move forward. But yeah, I think that's probably why it works for me.
Right.
The healing is my focus.
I think the thing is, we have so many different parts of ourselves, and some of these, it's not like we go through childhood and we drop those parts. We're made up of all the different parts of our lives, aren't we? So we've still got these child parts of ourselves who are like still trapped in time, still trapped in that time. So even though things in your adult self might be safe, you've still got those parts of ourselves that are traumatized and say come to the surface sometimes. And it's about trying to, I suppose, process, reassure those parts of ourselves. Look around you, like some of the work I'm doing now. Look around you now. We're safe. I can look after you. You're safe. You know, this is a time where we can move on now. You know, trying to process those childhood parts, I suppose, is the challenge.
If we come back to trauma, like the long-term effect of child sexual abuse is so pervasive that it's sometimes hard to pinpoint precisely how the abuse affected you, because it permeates everything: your sense of self, intimate relationships, as I said earlier, sexuality, parenting, work, and even your sanity. So many survivors are not aware of the ways the abuse hurt them because they're too busy surviving.
Right.
And as you said earlier, healing can only start when you acknowledge the impact of abuse. And sexual abuse is one of the many factors that other things that happened around you have impacted your development as well. So, and that's why it's challenging to isolate its effects from the other influences on your life, and why it's hard to do it on your own.
And so what would be, you said before, like, okay, we need to do this all together, or don't do it alone. That's step number one. And but what is the program that you're using at the moment? Or do you have a program or tips? Or
I do. I'm actually building a course at the moment. My flow is obviously, first, I always have a talk to see if we're fit, because it's very important to find the right person to help you out.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do it. Not all the therapists out there, even if they're brilliant, are right for you. Yeah. So it's like shopping for shoes. You need to go and try them on and make sure the fit is right.
Yeah.
So the first step is about taking stock. And when I say taking stock, it's like doing an inventory of what happened to you and acknowledge and respect what you had to do to survive. Because survivors tend to beat themselves up for, all the different things they had to go through or had to do. And there's nothing wrong there. Once again, they feel like the bad guys. So it's doing an inventory of all of the actions you had to take and really give yourself some grace there. Because you were a child, it was not your fault, and you had to survive. And for this, it's important to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, wow, I'm still there. And I'm really, really, really incredibly strong to go through something like that. So this would be the first part. And also, it's for those people at the beginning to feel heard. They need someone to hear the story, someone that's not going to judge or laugh at them, because that happens a lot. Yeah, but are you sure? Are you sure this really happened? It's not in your imagination.
I've seen it so much with myself as well. The moment when you say, like, hey, this and that happened, and then even like a psychologist or doctor says, nah, that didn't happen. I go, yeah, I'm pretty sure it happened. I was there.
You weren't there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point there.
Yeah. This is why a lot of survivors or won't go and tell their stories, or back in the days would not even go to the police, because immediately people will point finger at them. Once again, they will be pointed as the bad guy. Well, but what did you do for him to do this?
Wow. Yeah.
So that would be the first part. And then I do a lot of writing exercises because it helps bringing more awareness, and it helps. Writing is an incredible tool for healing.
Because their self-esteem isn't already shattered, or
and it's writing without thinking of the grammar, whether it doesn't matter. You just let that voice within you that wants to speak, and you let it express itself, because it's been suppressed for such a long time. It needs to come out, and writing is a great way to start. So I have a lot of different exercises that I propose to my clients. Then there is also the next step is recognizing the effects. Okay, there are so many possible effects that trauma has on you. As I said earlier, it can be depression, it can be gambling, it can be suicidal thoughts, it can be intimacy issues, self-harm, alcoholism, drugs. I mean, you name it, there's all of them are on the list.
Yeah.
But there are other ways that people are not necessarily aware of, which are trying to rationalize what happened to them, or to minimize it, which hurts you even more, because that means if you minimize what happened to you, you've gone through a series of abuse in your life, and you minimize that, being like, oh yeah, but he was working really hard, and he was coming back home, and he was always in a bad mood, so that's probably why he did it. Like, that is not good for your soul, is it? It means, it's like saying, Dad's a little pissed off. He did that, but it's not good. But it's not good for your development to minimize what happened to you. You just have to recognize whatever happened, it was bad, and I suffered. And then you take it from there. So that's one of them. There's denying as well. Some people completely denying it. You've got amnesia happens. It's a way of protecting yourself.
Yes.
I went through that, where I managed to, it's not erased, obviously. It stays in your hard drive somewhere, but your brain protects you and releases the information
when it's ready. Yeah.
The universe works in a way that is fantastic. It releases the information at some point for you. Or splitting. You've got people that a lot of survivors have a capacity to split.
Given it some mitigation,
having the possibility to experience something, but not being there at the same time.
Split personality.
It can, in some extreme cases, you will have split personalities, but it's not necessarily, in that case, it's detaching yourself from your body. Yeah. It's a way to when this sexual abuse is happening, it's a way to just like
to deal with it.
Yeah, the mind is just, which makes survivors incredible, very creative people, and amazing at imagination, because this has been developed in such a way. Or to just be in a room, because that's something that was used to survive during the sexual act itself, or when you're being beaten up, when you're really suffering. It's a way to cut from the pain. But this is great when it's happening. But imagine in your day-to-day life, when you suddenly split like that, the impact it can have. You're sitting in a meeting at work, and
almost like you're a third party to
you're gone.
What happened, the trauma that happened.
Yeah. So these are some of the effects that trauma can have. Lying is a big one. You don't just lie to yourself, you lie to others as well. You just lie. You just lie because you want to create a better story for yourself. All of these effects can be positive or negative. It really depends how you're using them on a daily life. But if you haven't gone and done the work, usually they have more of the negative impact. So, for example, humor is another one that is a coping mechanism. Humor can be a fantastic tool in your life, yes?
Yeah,
especially
you're no longer
if you want to
present at that
become
moment.
an actor or a comedian. But if you laugh about everything and you're cynical about everything, then that's not good. It's not a good way to live your life. So again, going through some sort of therapy or coaching is where you're going to learn how to reverse all these things and use them in a way that empowers you, and makes your life better. Not only it's I've dealt with my trauma, but I've transcended it. This is why I'm in a place where I can help others now. And even so, sometimes some survivors will do this, but they're not completely there.
Yeah.
So that can be really dangerous place to be for them as the coach or the therapist, and for the people that they're counseling. So I would say to every survivor out there that are really keen on helping others to heal, make sure you're at the right place.
Yes.
And that you're not doing this for the wrong reason, because you could really end up hurting people even more. So for me, as I said, I wiped it from my mind, and it came back in my early 20s. The abuse for me started when I was, my earliest memory, I'm 5 years old. I don't know if there's anything earlier than that.
Yeah.
And it went on until I was 14. And I ended it. I got angry. And this is why I love anger. I got angry, and I was like, I'm going to kill you. I was really a lion with all her claws out, and I was ready to kill.
You still are.
Not the same way. Not the same. I'm way more.
No, in a good way nowadays.
I was ready to kill. I was not ready to fight. I was ready to kill. And I think it came through the energy, and from then on it was done. I think my brain wanted to give me back a little bit of my youth, time to enjoy my youth. It was short, but I had a good time forgetting about it. And then he came back in my early 20s, and I was completely alone. My family lives in Africa. I was in France studying at university, and the flashbacks started hitting me. And at first I was like, what is that? Obviously you get very depressed, a lot of tears, all the emotions you can imagine, rage. There's a lot of rage in survivors, a lot of rage. And this is why I say don't do it alone, because I did it alone. I've never seen a therapist. I've never had a coach. I think the thing I did well,
You were ready to fight back
at a young age, is that I didn't put it back under the carpet. I didn't sweep it back under the carpet. I was like, oh, the box of Pandora is just open. I'm going to watch all the demons that are coming out of this. And I think that was the right decision. This is the first step to healing anyway. I didn't know it. I was quite young, but intuitively, that's what I did. And I'm naturally curious, so I made research. I started reading books, and I sat and observed what I was doing. And every decade, I would grow a little bit more and figure out things in a deeper way. I did try and tell my story once. Someone made fun of me, calling me a liar. So that story stayed within me for over 20 years after that. And I only started telling it once more.
Wow. Okay.
But it was a self-healing journey, and it took a long time. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else. So I'm using a mix of resources that have helped me. There's a mix of therapy, there is spirituality, there are writing exercises, there's visualization. It's a combination of a lot of things, and fun. I make them dance, I make them laugh, I make them smile, I make them, because we're alive.
Yeah. And
I love sharing singing, dancing videos with them, and remind them that, hey, you know, this is something you can still do.
You know, I've met quite a number of people on my journey of healing. Mine wasn't particular to do with any kind of abuse, but more to do with mental health. a lot of people who've been through childhood abuse and working a lot with plant medicine. I don't know if that's ever anything you've kind of come across, but that directly helps people to, experience these things. I met one guy in the Amazon actually who didn't even realize he'd been abused in childhood and been depressed his whole life, and on the medicine he actually was able to see it for the first time, which is amazing, to be able to unlock that and unpack it. But what I wanted to get to the point is, like, this is something that I discussed with Florrie, is at the end of it, once you processed all of this energy, all these emotions, all these memories, getting to a point where she had said where she was actually able to completely forgive the abuser. And is that for you like the end point then of the healing? Obviously that's not something you can do straight away. It takes a lot of work. But were you able to do that yourself, find some forgiveness and realize that perhaps it was even to the point where you could think to yourself, this happened not to me, but for me, in a way to help me to understand something, to evolve and to learn about forgiveness?
Yes, I have been through the forgiveness phase. Now, I never say to my clients or anyone who's gone through, especially child sexual trauma, you have to forgive. A lot of survivors are told you need to forgive. I don't say that. I don't think they have to if they don't want to. Because some of them have gone through some real shit, all the way to being to traffic. So asking them to forgive, it's throwing an extra layer of trauma and horror on them. It's unfair to ask that. Yeah. But for some of us, we go through that phase, and I've been through. And it wasn't like the first year, I'm telling you, it was probably after 15, 20 years where I suddenly went, all right, I'm done. I've forgiven you. And to even reach the point where there's some form of gratitude to what this experience has made out of me, what I've become, because that darkness made me choose the light. And to choose to become a better person that will help others to heal. I chose love rather than hate or violence. In that extent, I'm grateful for the experience. And I still see my abuser when I go back home. I once picked up the phone and I was like, you and we need to have a talk. I got some shit to tell you.
Wow.
I had enough with the beating. I was like, you beat me, I beat you. Yeah. You come with that belt to me. You're getting something back. A punch. I'm done. And then it was the same with the sexual abuse and everything else in life. There's always a moment where it's like, okay, I've had enough of that. And that fierce person inside of me is a savior. I used to be way more aggressive, borderline bully at times. I don't need that anymore. So yeah, just to come back to your question, I went through that phase of forgiveness, and it was a beautiful experience for me. It was real freedom, because it's not that you forgive them, really. Yeah. What my abuser did is wrong and will always be wrong. It's yourself that you forgive. This is the most beautiful act of self-love that you can do. You release yourself by forgiving yourself for all the hurt and for perpetuating the abuse in your adult life, because that's what survivors do. We talk to ourselves the way the abusers talk to us. We hurt ourselves through drugs and whatever, the way the abusers did that to us. When you start forgiving, it is yourself it's a massive middle finger to the whole world. It's yes. I'm not responsible for their soul, for their actions. It's for them to deal with it. And life has a way of, you know.
Karma, yeah.
Karma, that's perfect karma.
Karma will sort that out, yeah. One way of looking at it is, hurt people, don't they? So it's very highly likely that somebody who does that to somebody else, especially a child like that, has had it done to them, you would think. And that's a way a lot of people, I think, get to that point of forgiveness where you can see that other person, the abuser, as the abused, in their own childhood. I mean, I don't know what it was in your case, but often that's the case, isn't it? That these things get passed down through generations like that. So I know a few people who've managed to come to that
That's
point.
good because they said that act of forgiveness is for you, not for your abuser.
I mean, most survivors don't end up being abusers, and there's a little bit of that idea out there that a lot of survivors become parents that abuse children, and it's actually not the case. It's the whole family sometimes is involved in the abuse from generations, and they grow up like that, and they live sometimes in small areas, rural areas or small towns, and the abuse has been there forever. So the only role models they have is whatever they have around us. So the whole family will be involved. The father, the grandfather, the uncles, whatever. The mothers will still be there, kind of like not doing the violent act, but more involved maybe in the trafficking of the child. But they have grown up in so much violence and abuse that they're a little bit more, they've been completely messed up. They're completely messed up.
Wow. What a brilliant podcast. Well, we usually do a silly question at the end where we talk about, the 3 people you'd invite to dinner. But it's up to you girls. It feels like we'd be on a different level to that.
As I said it earlier, I focus on the healing, and I personally love bringing silliness into my
okay, we'll do
my
that
clients. It's part of my values. I love having fun.
We'll lighten it a bit. We'll lighten it a bit.
Yes, let's end with a positive and fun note. Any number I can invite?
3.
Oh, 3. I'll invite Maya Angelou.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I know what a caged bird sings, isn't it? I did that in school. Yeah. Did that book.
Maya Angelou, she's a philosopher and an activist. She used to be. She's a beautiful human being, inspiring, powerful. Look her up. Really look her up. She was a poet as well. She wrote beautiful poetry. She walked along Martin Luther King. She has the most beautiful voice, deep, loving. I'm in love with this woman. I'll have Nelson Mandela.
Nice.
I wish I could have more people, but I think I'll have Will Smith for some fun.
Right. Yeah.
And he's funny, but he's got a lot of wisdom in him as well. They do, him and his wife. I mean, especially his wife does this red table talk, which I really love. They bring up topics that are very interesting. I might have Tony Robbins, for the coaching, and let's choose. Oh, I know who I would have as well. I'd have Kamala Harris, politician, the new US Vice President. Because she's fierce.
I love that. Oh, so
Lucas.
My Wi-Fi shit. My Wi-Fi shit. My Wi-Fi. You guys take it over.
Well, we're back next week. Obviously, we've had some amazing guests recently. We've got some more to come. But for this week, thank you, Curl, so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Federal Pod, and we'll watch your journey with interest. And thank you, guys. Thank you, Casper, and thank you, Tony. And as I said, back next week. Adios.
Adios.
Thank you.
You have been listening to
Free Amigos.
Hey there, hope you've really enjoyed listening or watching to the conversation today. And as promised, we have all the links to the topics discussed in the description below and also on our website.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or follow the link to our brand new website where you can sign up to our weekly newsletter.
Thank you for watching or listening. We hope you got something good out of it. If you've got any interesting topics you'd like us to discuss or any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And that's it. See you in the next pod. Adios.
Cheers.